Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing Funny Face, directed by Stanley Donen, Judas and the Black Messiah by Shaka King, Copshop by Joe Carnahan, The Power of the Dog by Jane Campion, and newly released Belfast, directed by Kenneth Branagh. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
Tommy boy, how's it going?
I'd say it's going pretty well. How's your week of movies, man?
Week was good. We have, of course, a very old film in here, and I'll talk about that, what I'll be doing for February. But continuing to chip away at a lot of Oscar films or Oscar-nominated films, or soon to be. Basically the buzz around that. Want to make sure that we can go through what was in the film festival circuit, now having a theater run and kind of going through those.
Yeah, a lot of 2021 releases, I should say. But we really just have that one in theaters, though. That last one, that Belfast.
Exactly.
Everything else pretty much got kicked out of theaters by now.
Yep.
Very cool. Okay, so should we start with that kind of the old one?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
So we're going all the way back to 1957. Very cool. It's a Aubrey Hepburn, Fred Astaire movie. And this one is Funny Face.
Yes, and the start of Fred Astaire February. I don't know if we'll commit to that for year after year. Very early on, folks, when Tom and I were just doing this for our own benefit and kind of categorizing our movie reviews, this was one of the first things or first type of watch list things that I did, because I've always loved Fred Astaire, but how do you navigate what is a good Fred Astaire movie? There's simple romances with dancing and musical and whatnot. So February always, in the theme of love, was always something I dedicate to Fred Astaire movies. So.
Yeah, we always, so just so you folks know, the reason why we were able to have, we do 5 films a week now, but we have hundreds on this site, for literally years and years, Vin and I would just get together, we would see each other every month, every other month, sometimes every 3 months.
Yep.
And it's just like, all right, what kind of movies do you watch? And then we started doing the scores and building up, and now it became this. But even when we were just doing it for literally it was just me and you.
Yeah.
It's like pet project.
It's so long ago.
We were like, let's do, all right, well, how could we do all right, Fred Astaire February? It's just for no one else but our enjoyment.
Exactly.
But I love it.
Yeah, so this is the continuing of that, and hopefully we'll have something nice in the works for Fred, because I am a massive fan of his footwork and what he does on screen. This is a movie, Funny Face, much more for a vehicle for Audrey Hepburn. She is our lead with Fred Astaire and Key Thompson. I'm not familiar with her. Obviously we're going to be crossing paths with a lot of older actors and actresses, but they are more supporting to Audrey. And for that reason, not really a vehicle for Fred. This wasn't for the podcast, but not too long ago, Tom, we talked about The Towering Inferno, where Fred was a supporting role. This is later on in his career. This is, I believe, 57. So believe it or not, I wouldn't say past his prime, but when we talk about the heavy hitter Fred Astaire movies, that's 20s, 30s, 40s. This is already now 57.
Oh, he went back to the 20s, Fred Astaire?
Yeah, I believe Top Hat is 29, I want to say.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Nonetheless, Funny Face is a pretty great film and on a lot of lists for Fred Astaire, but I would not pitch this as a vehicle for him. This is definitely Audrey Hepburn's show. I would say from an elevator pitch, folks at home, this is a simple musical romance set in the world of fashion. London, and largely specifically Paris for the runtime. I would say lovers of Paris and French culture and obviously the fashion circuit of the time of late 50s. Definitely this will be a good watch for you because there's so much time put into the love affair with the city, a little bit of the stylings at the time of French intellectuals, and Fred Astaire and Key Thompson, they both play kind of the straight man and woman to that. So that's where a lot of the comedy lies. But for all intents and purposes, a very straightforward musical romance comedy of the time that's in the stylings of those early Fred Astaire movies, but once again, much later in his career. I would say for the setting, we have a really creative set work that plays into the filming of this movie. For me, when I look at a rom-com, or a musical for that instance, but rom-com specifically, the question I'm asking is, all right, I may really enjoy the performances on screen. I may be really, swept up in the romance or something like that. But why is this film great? How does it separate itself in being unique? And how does it separate itself in, being much more than just the rom-com story? And for Funny Face, there is some really creative set work. Specifically, there's a bookshelf sequence that they knock out the back of the bookshelf and they are we basically see the characters through, if we were behind it, or it's broken through. A lot of that goes into the set work that we see with the French fashion industry and runways, and clearly, I think this resulted in, historically, this being nominated for an Oscar for some of its cinematography, and I think it was actually cinematography that was nominated for. That's it then.
Okay.
But going back, obviously it's always, a little bit difficulty to align yourself with the Academy, but...
Yeah, it was for best costume, best art direction, best cinematography, best writing, and as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and typical, costume... It's a movie about fashion, but that cinematography, I think, lies in some creative work around the setting and specifically the prop work on screen. So good stuff. Choreography, I would say, is pretty light. If there's a reason why I wouldn't describe this as a Fred Astaire movie too much, he's obviously in it. He obviously does some dancing and has some solo time to dance. Choreography is very light. This is much more on the musical side than a dance musical or something like that.
Okay.
I would say it's probably not the best for that reason, but once again, I really want to drive home that this is a Hepburn movie primarily for that reason. And, by the numbers, Hepburn is great on screen. I haven't watched too many of her films, but she is really enchanting. I believe she's like 28 by the time this movie is.
Okay.
And, her energy on screen is really, really infectious. She plays uptight at first, but the excitement she has getting introduced to the world of fashion, it's a wonderful time. I think the best moments we have are when she loses maybe a little bit of aversion to Fred and Key trying to get her involved in this and seeing potential in her as a model, as a dress, a fashion model in this industry, and as a muse for Fred's photography and how he's portraying the designs in the fashion world. The excitement there works so well because I haven't seen much with her, but
there's a reason why we know her name.
Exactly.
She's that good. She's that good. Yeah.
It really is. I think it boils down to her ability to really just show excitement on screen, show enthusiasm for being involved in a new world that's fresh to her and fresh for a lot of audiences' eyes. I especially watching this in the modern day, I don't think any of us can really recall what the fashion industry was like in late 50s, no less Paris Fashion Week or anything like that.
Right, of course.
So when it comes to that, I thought that was a big highlight. the highlights specifically for folks at home that may have seen this old film are the photo shoots. Her smile when collaborating and doing the photo shoots with Fred. I mean, those are really where the film is at its best, because we have excitement and we have very, very important to the romance side of this rom-com musical. The chemistry between Fred and Audrey is really at its height there. So where I would want to kind of throw some criticism at this is the romance here is what I was scratching my head over. Astaire and Hepburn, both extremely charming, you know what I mean? We're talking about probably some of the most charming people you can ever even engineer, you know, in all of humanity.
So true.
But there is just such an odd age difference. I mean, we're talking about a solid 30-year
Literally,
gap.
yeah. So Fred Astaire born 1899,
Yeah.
and Hepburn was 1929 she was born, yeah.
And this it would not be too much of a problem, but man, it's just like not confronted at all in the film. I mean, like, I'm not saying it has to be like a point of drama or anything like that, but I think
Right, it's not
at
like she's
least
playing an underage, and he's
yeah.
right.
And Fred Astaire's character is supposed to be older too, obviously, like, you know, physically looking.
Right,
but he is supposed to be older. They make one joke about it in the film, but like, for me, it was like, it's something that really took me out, because this 30-year gap is just, it's too severe. It doesn't sell the romance too well.
Did it remind you a little bit of just like old Roger Moore? What because like Roger Moore's like last two films, he's getting up there in age to be Bond, but he's still with like the hot young Bond girls.
I think that's hits the nail on the head. There's not like a creepiness to it, but it's almost like, well, when you don't recognize it or maybe even crack a joke about it, it leaves the audience
you address it
wondering.
A little bit.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
If anything, tackle it head on and make that part of the story in some way.
Yeah,
you know?
like maybe have Hepburn, you know, in her own head struggling with, should I go with an older man or not, or should it be with someone younger? And
exactly. Dedicated musical number to it, you know, show Fred is limber and he can dance and he's not clearly, you know, not living his age, you know. Listen, you know, Astaire's my guy, you know. If he's getting if he's getting 28-year-old, that's good. But it just was a little bit odd and an odd pill to swallow for that reason. I think that really is my main critique of this film. Beyond that, I think this is a very cute, very charming musical. Doesn't escape the typical second act frustration in the romance, which is always something that I'm going to be marking a rom-com for, because it's just so generic, it's so by the beats. But we're also talking about 57
right
here.
Yeah.
You know, maybe a trendsetter in that type of arc. Though I wasn't particularly thrilled by it, I think the highlights of this film and the really, really excellent work that it does to making all three characters charming, likable on screen, and making you want to pay attention to Audrey Hepburn's character's progression in the fashion world. I think this is a very solid movie. Everyone is a delight on screen. I just would have liked it to crack the mold a little bit of how the romance is portrayed and how we create drama around the romance, other than the typical second act, like, oh, and now they're on the odds again. You know what I mean?
Right, sure, yeah. And again, it's in 57, but we're in the here and now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for that reason, we will go ahead and give Funny Face a 70 on the dot.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, 70, that's great. I have to start watching more Fred Astaire movies.
Oh, you're in luck. Might be working on something.
And I mean, as you said, it is a Hepburn movie, like through and through. But
yes.
It's just something that I think maybe it's a good jumping off point for people listening.
I think so,
you know?
yeah. And certainly, a little bit, actually much fresher than, Swing Time, I think, is 34, 32.
I think he started mostly on like early 30s. I think Top Hat was like 35, I saw.
Oh, okay. So maybe not.
Maybe getting into some films in late 20s,
Yeah. So
because by that time, he's almost 30 years old, really. Okay, awesome, Vin. 70 for Funny Face. Well, we're going to take a huge jump in time now. Because now we're in the 2021s. But some of these movies we have coming up are not quite in theaters anymore.
Yes.
We're just kind of doing some catch up and everything like that, especially for this year. But we're going to move on to Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yes.
And this is directed by Shaka King.
Yes. I believe a first feature-length production for him as well, because I was trying to look to if I saw anything. I off the top of my head, I don't think think I have. This is, of course, the Oscar winner. You know, if you really want to be critical, maybe, 2020 wasn't the most competitive year for the Oscars, but this is a...
Oh, it came out in 2020.
It's 2020. I think it had its theater run, but it was in the running for 2020 Oscars.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. A 2021 release, though, really swept through the Oscars for 2020 nominations, possibly through screeners,
Like early release kind of stuff.
Early
and everything
release,
like that. Yeah.
absolutely. This could have been film circuit or film festival.
Yeah,
type
definitely
of thing.
it was, yeah.
So for a wider release, you can find this today on HBO Max, and a very solid movie. This is a fully biographical telling of an interloper, quite literally a Judas within the Chicago chapter of the Black Panthers. This movie has mad Departed vibes for that reason.
Really?
Yes, it has that panic, that paranoia that comes into... we're getting a lot of the law side forcing an interloper or a rat, an agent, on the inside. And while it's a great structure for the story, I think why this film is truly great is are those historical beats. It's where the film separates from a very Departed style structure, because I don't want to over compare to it, but it really constantly had me thinking of it in certain segments. But when it separates from that, when it's trying to tell a semi-biographical account of what was going on in Chicago at this time, it really is, that's where this film is worth your time, and kind of carves a spot for itself. Our two leads are really just amazing. I am not a huge fan of Lakeith Stanfield.
Mm-hmm.
I feel he's a little bit one note sometimes, but this role is really under pressure in such a great way. And he really brings a lot of subtlety to how he's dealing with the pressure. There is a lot done to the type of language he uses, how he diffuses situations. There's a great sequence where the Black Panthers are questioning him of how he came into possession of a car. At the time, that's pretty rare, especially for how law enforcement would be, giving them scrutiny at the time. And the back and forth, the type of pressure, it would have any audience member on the edge of their seat of how the hell he's navigating this. And I think Lakeith does a great job at incorporating good ways to diffuse and selling with body language, selling the nervousness, selling the on-edgeness of it. And really, it's a delight to see. So I'm happy that he was in this film. Going into this, honestly, he was kind of a reason why I kind of backed off of it, because he really is our lead, to be fair. Daniel Kaluuya, though, would earn this Oscar any day of the week.
Really?
Not to be a hipster about it, I have been a longtime fan since Black Mirror, earlier on in his career, that original run of the 3 episodes. But man, his portrayal of Fred Hampton is not only spot on. There's real footage at the end to kind of show that for the audience, but I did do some diving into what Fred Hampton sounded like, and there's such a great match to what he sounded like, the cadence of his rallies in public life. I think where this goes beyond just a matching of a character in public life is how we see him act in private life. There's a mild romance that happens throughout this film for this character, and that separation between public and private life, and seeing Daniel follow through on that performance, man, it is top notch. I think he earns this any day of the week from me. As best supporting, that is.
Wow, very cool. That's good. That's good to know.
I think as far as the structure of this film, we are basically 50-50. We are spending time in this investigation, very Departed-like story structure. And then we're given kind of a mix of personal time and public life in this Chicago Black Panther movement. I think on that public-private split of the Chicago Black Panthers, that's where the film is at its best, because it's really introducing some cool new ideas, obviously portraying the menacing aspect of what we see through the feds and through law enforcement, moving Lakeith into this organization, and it's portrayed so interesting because both sides, I mean, they're just scrambling, with panic. Where it's pulling me in a different direction is because, the investigative side, it really does kind of boil down to been there, done that a little bit. I don't think it's bad for any reason, but I think it's a little bit of a critique for me because, honestly, the type of pressure that is introduced to Lakeith specifically and some of our characters, it feels just so rehashed when it comes to an interloper or a rat in an organization.
Right. So is it just like lacking, or it's just it's no there's just nothing new about it? I mean, it could have like old same tricks can kind of still really work, but there's almost like like you said, a been there, done that kind of a boringness to it. Yeah, and it's just lacking a certain depth or a coolness that the rest of the film kind of has.
It feels like there's actually a documentary that's referenced in the film for Lakeith's character, his real life person, and it feels like maybe our writing team, our director, saw that documentary and said, how do we make this into a dramatized story?
Okay.
There's obviously natural drama there, but it for that reason, it makes me think that in that writer's room, The Departed was just so interweaved to how they want to tell this interloper story. It kind of pulled me in two directions for that reasons. That said, I cannot stress enough that the performances make up for that entirely. And especially for Daniel's performance, I mean, it really is top notch. Not only what he's doing, but the charisma, the type of charismatic leader that you want to see on screen, but also why he's getting so much heat, why he's getting so much attention, why the feds are putting Lakeith to be a Judas to his Black Messiah right in the very name of the film. I think it does escape that criticism of being maybe a little bland, a little rehashed, because that second half of the coin is so great.
It's so good, and the acting really is so good. Notch. And Daniel has been he's been on quite a rise. Get Out with Get Out, right? Exactly,
absolutely.
And I'm wondering because he's British, potential maybe new Bond.
Oh,
do you think he has Bond quality?
Maybe.
Does he got the look? Does he have
maybe? I totally forgot about him, and because everyone when they say new Bond, maybe Black Bond, obviously everyone goes to
Idris.
Yes,
yeah, he's too old. You got to pick somebody who's young 30s, mid 30s, because you're gonna have a 4 to 5 picture deal with them.
So I think very potentially, but either way, I can't stress enough that his performance here is dynamite. Yeah. And I mean, I would give him Best Supporting up against a lot of even historically Best Supporting winning actors and performances.
That's awesome.
It is top notch.
And how much screen time? I mean, since he is a supporting,
it is supporting. I would say maybe 40-60.
Okay.
Because
right,
his private life is expanded upon so much, and I think that's as well. That gives depth beyond just this actor is obviously doing a good job at portraying the rallies, the public speaking that this character does. He takes that and he evolves it into private life, and is still staying so true to that character, Fred Hampton. So, with that said, we will go ahead and give Judas and the Black Messiah an 80 on the dot.
Oh, wow. Okay. Jeez. Okay. A little bit of a big boy alert there. That's fantastic. Yeah. 80%. Damn.
Yeah. Definitely something I probably should have watched last year, but
Well, it's so weird because again, just
the release is
so weird because it technically came out in 2021, but came out early enough to technically grab the 2020 Oscars as well. Very strange, kind of weird.
Maybe they were pushing the boundaries with it being technically on a film festival circuit or something like that, because they were just low on nominations or something like that. We're talking about 2020 here, as far as...
I think it went through the cycle of the film festivals too, big time. Yeah. But definitely something for us all to go back to.
Absolutely.
It's going to go on my list for sure. Judas and the Black Messiah, 80%, very cool. All right, so we're going to keep on going with, again, another 2021 here. A little bit different film here. We're going to do Copshop, directed by Joe Carnahan. And we have Gerard Butler, Frank Grillo. Vin, what do we have?
I am so excited to talk about this film. But folks at home, when I say a boys watch, when I say get your boys together and watch an action movie,
Wow, really?
this is that type of movie. I can't tell you how much this film scratches that itch of just a solid, well-woven action film. And it's from a director that I don't really like. He did Smoking Aces, stylized, but not good, not a great movie at all.
Would you say he's definitely a type of director? I mean, Smoking Aces and Copshop, they're kind of that action, a little bit of, right?
Yep. And recently he did also a film called Boss Level, which it's on one of my lists, but wasn't really going to get around to it. I may now,
right?
Because Copshop, I really
went over my head. This one,
mine too.
I don't remember when it came out.
It looks
this year.
very generic, but it is a great time.
Awesome.
Let me unpack it a little bit of why this boys watch is the way I'm kind of pitching it to you folks at home. Is it's got a serious love of guns in this movie, though it's got a very dumb dialogue. Fuck is in every probably other word in a lot of sequences. It's very entertaining. I mean, this film is, I would say, defined by knowing exactly what it is and doing a great job to maybe subvert expectations in some spots. And again, it interweaves a story. This is a little action flick within a police station between a hit target and his assassin. That is Frank Grillo and Gerard Butler. And while that's, those guys are even our leads, we have a wonderful supporting cast. And really, I'll get into it in a moment. The best parts about this film are actually not at all those two top-billed casts.
Really?
Not at all. I would say they're probably the mediocre elements of it.
Wow.
But they give structure to where this film really shines. And again, it's more so about getting our main characters with a conflict in the same spot within a holding cell of a police station. So I think what was unexpected is it is a surprisingly well-woven story. There is constantly callbacks, tiebacks into concepts introduced, and just a really tight script for that reason. Again, I'm not saying that the script is anything highbrow or even relatively highbrow, but again, it kind of knows what it is and is very entertaining for that reason. Soundtrack, I am a very big fan of.
Okay. Always helps.
Steals the steals the opening from Magnum Force, which is the second Dirty Harry film, and actually for the second week in a row, I'm getting to bring up Lalo Schifrin as the composer here.
Cool.
He's not the composer, but they grab other motifs and soundtrack beats from the whole Dirty Harry franchise, which is awesome.
Yeah,
I love that music so much.
Yeah, there's something about the pace of the music. It's like perfect for an action,
absolutely,
for that type of film. Yeah,
it has that 70s feel.
Yep.
Very, very cool. And
Copshop set in the 70s?
No, modern day.
Okay.
Yeah, really, really top notch. If they were going to grab a theme, the theme of Magnum Force, look it up, folks. I mean, it is just cool as ice. So great. Like I said, my main criticism to this is a very dumb dialogue. It is riddled with curses, and I mean, it's the best way I can kind of condense this is it's stupid in sound. It sounds stupid. It is not stupid in story. It is like if I read you the script, for instance, or anything like that,
it would be bad. It would look ridiculous.
Almost
subtitle
on the level of like a sci-fi, like a Sci-Fi the Channel film, or something like that.
Yeah, there's the tagline or like the subtitle is Copshop. Someone's got to take the hit.
Not the best.
It says on the movie poster.
Get that marketing better a little bit.
But it just, it's a pretense to how the script's going to
be. Yeah. But I can't stress enough that even if the dialogue turns you off initially with how many curse words are in it, or how much more importantly that is used as kind of a break between in sentence structures for our characters and the lines they're delivering, it is it's worth it. The amount that is woven in together, it is a smart story despite a very lowbrow script.
Okay.
So
Does it know it's lowbrow script? Like,
I
is it
think
kind
so.
of making fun of itself a little bit?
Quite possibly. I think if there's a theme through all this is that this film absolutely understands what it is.
Oh,
you
okay,
know?
cool. Yeah.
Almost a la John Wick,
Yeah, I
almost
was
a
gonna
la
say.
Nice Guys.
Yeah.
You know, it's very well woven for that reason. Let's talk about some performances, though. I have no interest in talking about Gerard or Frank. I have
hilarious.
interest in which they're not bad. They sell the idea.
Okay.
They sell the basically the entry to this, but the standouts are two very specific standouts. Alexis Louder. I don't have much experience watching her on screen. She plays our fully good character and a true badass on screen. She is a delight to watch because she is smart, she is cool, and if there's going to be a love of guns in characters, it's her character, which I feel was such a great subversion of what we expect of a female lead or female supporting or in movies nowadays. Sure. Specifically for you, Tom, she has a fascination and a love with single action army revolvers.
Oh, cool.
And it's used as, once again, if I had to sell kind of a well-woven story, it's used as plot devices. It's not she just has a single action arming because she likes the revolver, the style. There's the typical jokes of like, oh, that's an old gun, or how are you going to kill anyone with that old-fashioned gun? It relates to plot elements then, and it's just such a tight little movie. Wow. I love it.
Coming through the weeds, this movie.
It really is. It really is. For that reason, why I was so excited to talk about it, because who the hell's talking about Copshop?
No one. Never even heard of it.
Exactly. I just think also for that note for Alexis, just a textbook way to write a badass female character on screen. It's not shoved down our throats in any sort of way.
Good.
She is badass because of the actions.
She sells herself,
exactly.
And she just plays a character great.
Yeah. I'm not having to be told that she's a badass. I'm really being shown that she's a badass, and over again for the movie. I mean, she outdoes Frank and Gerard.
Wow.
That's both of them.
That's
2-1.
That's awesome.
She's great. This film, though, let's one more highlight for the.
You did say there was two actors, right?
There is true. Okay. There is true. I had no idea who this actor was, but wow. I mean, there's probably a lot of performances. There are no names, but Toby Huss. Right at the second act of this film, it's kind of getting a little slow. It's kind of crawling to a halt, and I was like, all right, well, this is where the film's going to lose a little bit of gas. Toby Huss gets a mainline injection of not only fantastic action, but such chaotic energy on screen. He holy shit, he saves this movie.
I like Toby Huss a decent amount.
Really?
He was in a show called *Halt and Catch Fire*.
Oh, okay.
Great AMC show that people don't pay attention to because it was overshadowed by some other stuff and *The Walking Dead*. Toby Huss, very good, and I hope to see him more. He reminds me a lot like Ed Harris, and not a lesser Ed Harris.
Sure.
Just if you want Ed Harris, hey, Toby Huss works just as good.
Yeah, right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. But yeah,
I've never watched anything. That's fantastic.
Yeah, he was in a couple other stuff too. But I hope to see. I mean, he's older, but I hope to see him more.
He was.
That's good to hear.
So entertaining. Like the injection of chaotic energy into this film that he does. Not only, is it a jaws of life on this film as it's just even slightly getting slow, but he is so entertaining on screen. If I really wanted to be critical that, maybe if it kind of comes out of nowhere and there's not a great lead-in, so it could be kind of just seen as, they're just throwing in a wacky character. But his role in it not only is just like so endlessly entertaining, but I think once again, there's some great setup before he's introduced on screen, and then some follow-through to tie it all back within this film. I go back to how tightly woven this film is and what it sets up for itself and what it calls back to.
I love it.
And if there is a reason to watch it, it is for Toby.
Right.
Wow, it is. It is.
We might have to check him out a little bit.
I might have to.
Yeah.
I mean, he plays a very insane character in this, but a delight on screen. Absolutely. Just one of those like, oh, you like action movies? You got to see him in this. That is great.
Wow. Damn. Okay, cool.
Absolutely. But bottom line, though, I think on that very note, if you like action movies, it has it all, and probably is too entertaining for its own good. We're going to go ahead and give Copshop a 79.
Ooh, I can't wait.
Watch it with the boys.
I can't wait.
Boys watch, BW.
That's such a good score.
Yeah. I really had a ball with it. It was so endlessly entertaining.
Because action films, it doesn't happen often where it's just like when action films have that kind of, I don't know, do you think this could get a bit of a cult following, a bit of a John Wicky kind of?
I think so.
I always hate to compare to John Wick. We're always bringing it up.
Yeah,
but the problem
true.
is it does strike a chord. John Wick was a bit of a trendsetter.
Absolutely.
And most people kind of know it too.
I think so. And I certainly feel similar energy in wanting to recommend this film for a boys watch. And maybe I shouldn't make it just down to a boys watch, but like an action film watch. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
this
of course,
has electricity to it, and is really, there's a lot of care put into this. Despite, again, it sounds dumb, it sounds simple. It is a very good time and has some really great action beats for it.
Damn. Okay, that's 79 is so good. That's shaping out to be a pretty good episode here, man.
Absolutely.
Well, let's keep it going here. Maybe let's see how good these last two are. This next one coming out, big film for Benedict Cumberbatch here. And it is The Power of the Dog, directed by Jane Campion. And what do we have here?
Talk about just like such a change in tone. Like this is such a drastically different film than Copshop. It's great. The Power of the Dog. This is a movie about cattle brothers in 1920s Montana.
Very cool.
Yes, exactly. I was really interested in this, despite some early Oscar buzz for this film. This was definitely one of those films that I wanted to tackle early. Hopefully, kind of intercept some of the nominations and get it done early.
Well, it's funny that you said this despite the fact that it was going to get Oscar buzz, you still saw it.
Yeah.
Which goes to show what we think earlier. Think of the Oscars.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I like that premise of late cowboy. Turn of the century cowboy.
Oh yeah.
They're becoming a relic. 1920s Montana, cattle ranching. This is very much a relationship movie about two brothers. We have Benedict Cumberbatch, and actually the second time we're seeing him this week, Jesse
Plemons.
Jesse Plemons. So
what else was he in?
He was in Judas and the Black Messiah. He
played
the Fed.
Gotcha.
Or the main Fed contact. But yeah, it is very much about a relationship between brothers, jealousy within that relationship, stress, and kind of rivalry. And for that reason, I don't really find this movie to be a Western. If I had to really call this something, it's a character drama with late Western dressings. This has really nothing to do about cattle ranching. This has really nothing to do with those concepts that I was excited to see it for, of the evolution of what that life is becoming slowly a relic of that time of turn of the century. It is just kind of the setting dressings to this character drama, which is not a bad thing, by whatsoever, but definitely something I want to note because I think this is being billed heavily as a Western, through Netflix. This is a big,
definitely
critical Western film. So there is a lot of praise online for this. And if I was excited to watch this movie, it was that classic case where I wanted to kind of check those expectations. This has a 97 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Has a 94 now.
Oh, 94. Well,
which nobody.
There you go for
how much do we
variation there.
Yeah, everybody loves a changing number.
Right.
It's just like it's this point.
Yeah,
what the hell is the point of it's just ridiculous. Anyway. But yeah, it's got a 94 as of right now. Who knows what'll be tomorrow.
And listen, I think Benedict is very good here. I think his performance we'll get into in just a moment. But I gotta be honest, this is a pretty boring film. This is a snoozer, folks.
It's 2 hours and 6 minutes as well.
Yeah. And that's not just because, and I say this more so for Tom than anything, we talked about last episode where where, there is probably a 10-point bump that I give to science fiction films and probably a 10-point sink on Westerns films.
And it just so happens I'm a big Western person.
Right.
So when I watch a Western, if I had my own ratings,
Yeah.
I would always be making them
Absolutely.
probably 10 points higher than what people think they should be. You were like that. Well, and now that we're doing the daily ratings, you
Yes.
definitely are able to check that at the door a little
for
bit.
sure.
But it's always like, I want your Westerns up 10. It's very funny. I want you up 10 on Westerns, down 10 on sci-fi.
Exactly.
Complete opposite with me to you. It's so good.
Exactly. A real Woody Buzz Lightyear dynamic we have going. So
Perfect.
yeah, but when it comes to this movie, though, I mean, believe me, it's not for the reasons that it's Western stylings, but not being a real Western story. It's just very slow going, and it finally picks up about an hour and 20 in a really good way, and introduces kind of the whole point of the film in kind of like a psychological drama. I don't want to give too much away because this is really, if there's going to be a reason to watch this film, it's where things pick up in this way. But I gotta let you know. I mean,
It took an hour and 20 minutes to get there.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm coming from. I mean, it's a snoozer up until then. Granted, that is set up for why the later half of the film is so good.
Okay.
Eventually, but critically here, I mean, much like a TV show, if I'm recommending you something and it says, "Oh, well, you got to wait until this point until it gets good," that's not a good.
Or like, hey, season 2 is good, so get through that bad season 1.
Choke it down, and
Okay.
I mean, it's and that was very much this movie,
So the fact that it was a Western, did it make it compelling? Was it beautifully shot, or was this more like was it just like a slow drama with Western dressings?
I think the Western setting, though it doesn't have maybe a follow through on what type of story we're telling, it does play into probably the biggest highlight, which is cinematography. This is a beautiful looking film.
Cool.
I would say this is a very big highlight. We got big landscape shots. Interiors are gorgeous, both in set design, but also what they decide to put an emphasis on. This definitely plays into the relationship end of the brothers, and ultimately what Benedict Cumberbatch's character is frustrated over, and has so much anger with it. I think if there's a reason to watch this film, it is for a beautiful portrayal of Montana cattle life, and maybe a little bit of a mix of civilization, and certainly the Cattle Brothers having more money. That it's taking it to just a wonderful mix of a time period.
Okay, all right.
Colors are cool, colors are crisp, and I think while some of the themes of the films are given visual storytelling through the landscapes, I really think that the highlight there is just the very large landscapes that we're looking at. It does tie into some of the themes on its own, though. It just works so well.
Cool.
And I think if we're going to give anything to the credit of why this has to be called a Western in some way, it's for how the ranch life, the cattle life plays into masculinity, plays into the landscape. There's shots of horse muscles and harsh mountain landscape, and I think that tells a story in itself. Gave me a little bit of Fargo vibes of how the setting is telling a story in itself.
Oh, not a bad thing.
Definitely not a bad thing,
Yeah.
and I would say really the biggest highlight of this movie. So, but I think where this boils down, this is a movie. Benedict Cumberbatch is acting angry, acting frustrated the whole movie. He's certainly doing a good job. The anger is expanded upon, of course. And once we get an understanding for the anger, it is certainly powerful. He's definitely doing a good job as far as the role, but it's just so painfully boring, and we don't get into the explanation of that anger, and we definitely don't get into the best part about this film with a psychological element until very late in it, and that's where I'm kind of coming very lukewarm with this. It's certainly acted well, but I think the stakes are weak. It just takes too long to grab us in to that and explain that. Kristen and Jesse, Kristen Stewart. No, what am I saying? Kristen Stewart.
Kirsten Dunst.
Kirsten Dunst. I don't know why I had Kristen. Goes to show you what you thought of the performance. No, despite being in a real world relationship, I think it's some of the weakest part of the film. Like there's very little chemistry on screen. There's.
Wait, are they a couple in real?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I saw that. I was like, oh, okay, maybe we have some good chemistry on screen.
Maybe he was pissed in real life at her, and that's why he was so good at.
Well, Jesse and Kirsten are the couple. I don't know. Yeah, it's man, I can't stress enough that it was just too boring for what the payoff became with this. And again, I can't take away the performance from Benedict. He is certainly playing his character, his struggles, where the anger comes from. It is expounded upon, and I think it's a pretty good matching for the solitude that comes with ranch and cattle life at the time. It's just too long. It's just too long to get there, and far too boring. Not engaging enough during the ride there. It eventually gets there, and that's where I want to make sure my perspective is always balanced for you folks at home, because if you're really invested, if you love Benedict Cumberbatch, this is probably a very solid, if not a great watch up until those Rotten Tomato 94s. Because if you're engaged with it, guess what? That boring stuff isn't boring anymore. But it just did not give enough, and especially where the story goes, it makes me wonder, where was this? Where was this focus half of the movie? It should have been sprinkling these psychological elements throughout the... Exactly.
Get you something to bite your teeth into a little bit to hang on to.
Exactly.
Something to hang on.
Exactly.
And, like you said, if you love Benedict Cumberbatch, it might be different. But, so many people, who doesn't we love Benedict Cumberbatch, you know what I mean? And it still wasn't enough for you to be hanging on.
Yep, exactly.
So, it sucks that you had to wait an hour and 20, really, like you said.
Yeah.
Till it gets going.
I just think, I don't know, it just did not live up to that immense hype that you see online. I don't think by any extent it is a bad movie, but if there is a role I can play for you folks at home, it is checking that hype and setting a little bit more of a consistent and fair expectation and rating for these films, especially when there's a lot of buzz around it. I think for that reason... give it a watch if you are finding yourself a fan of Benedict Cumberbatch. If you want to see the eventual good that happens in the movie, and I'm certain it's probably going to be on a lot of watch lists come Oscar season. With that said, we will go ahead and give The Power of the Dog a 62.
Yeah, 62, still not bad. But, maybe if that first hour and 20 had a little bit more, like you said, that peppering in of what we see in the second half.
Just hint us in on where it's going.
Yeah, you'd probably be bumping it up a decent amount.
Absolutely, because it is good eventually, but just snoozer.
It takes a while to get there. Okay, then 62 for The Power of the Dog. Very good. All right, folks, we have one more here to go. That is our In Theaters Now film. But again, we want to take a second here to do our producer segment. We want to remind everybody at home we are going off of the value for value model. So if you're checking into the podcast, if you're checking into the website, before you go to watch a movie or click play, something like that, if you're getting value from kind of our content here, if you could become a producer yourself, and you can go to the dailyratings.com, you go to the donations tab and donate whatever amount of value you want. So, we have some fun. We have a weekly and some monthlies. We have one-time donations that are kind of preset, kind of like fun little donations that have to do with us, the Daily Ratings. But if you want any silly amount that you want to give us, go for it.
Silly donations.
Right, silly donations. And the cool thing is, when you donate, you're an official producer. You get that credit. You can write in a note, and we read that note right on air, right here on the producer segment. It opens up dialogue with you. You can be as upset with us. You can have ideas for us. It's just almost open dialogue, and it's a through line to all of you guys. And so we appreciate all you who help produce this podcast and the Daily Ratings. Takes time, takes a little bit of money as well, so it just really helps us keep this going. Vin and I host, you guys help produce, and it's huge for us. We look at something like a Rotten Tomatoes that's owned by massive companies and are changing the score. It's just like, it's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And giving these high 90s, it's crazy. And you might say like, hey, Judas and the Black Messiah only an 80%, when other people are like have to understand 80 is phenomenal for the daily ratings.
Absolutely,
You know, it's very much more difficult to reach those, upper 80s and upper 90s for a reason. You know, think about how many films are out there. When it cracks 80, especially when it cracks 85, these are some of the best movies ever made, you know?
And truly worth your time for that reason.
For anybody's time. You know, when you hit that 85, this is a movie for anybody to sit down and watch and enjoy. And that's why people who just are giving out high scores left and right, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And we try to bring it back down to earth. That 80% is incredible score. That cop shot at a 79, it's fantastic. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we operate. It's how we do things here. And again, when you become a producer, when you donate, you get that direct line to us. You get to write in, and we'll read it on air, and it opens up dialogue with all you. So we appreciate it so much. Again, it's dailyratings.com. Just head to the donations tab. And with that said, let's keep it going. This is our In Theaters Now film. We have Belfast.
Yes. Okay. So this technically, I believe, was on a film circuit in early September, and now is just having some theatrical releases.
A little bit wider release now, right?
Yeah, maybe not super wide because it's still having to deal with the heavy hitters of December and whatnot and January. But I was happy to see this film because, as far as hype goes, this film has a lot of buzz around it. I want to actually start with a little bit of how this film was billed and the soundtrack. This film was billed, I think, in marketing material as a musical. That is not the case here, and I bring it up because I think when a lot of audience members hear musical, that's going to be a turnoff or that's going to be something that they avoid. This is a very music-heavy film, and you don't have characters singing on screen, but you do have Van the Man Morrison doing the soundtrack on this one. I think my favorite parts about it are when it is just solo saxophone with atmospheric sounds.
Oh, okay.
And there's a lot of music being interwoven here. Where I'm not so much of a fan is when it is just straight up songs. It's not that his music is bad in quality. If anything, I am a fan of Van Morrison quite a bit. But there are just a few too many, and it's a little bit too much in the forefront. I would say if there's anywhere that kind of musical designation or description of it as a genre is coming through, is that there's just significant sequences in this film that it's just Van Morrison's song just playing straight up. So.
Okay.
So a little bit good and bad. I think what he's doing in the score and what he's doing in the more atmospheric elements are really a highlight for me. This movie is set in the real-life conflict between Protestant citizens and a Catholic supremacist group called the Troubles. I had no idea about this.
Yeah.
Definitely was ignorant to it. When I saw it in some of the marketing and whatnot, I thought it was Irish Republican Army or IRA, and it was confusing initially paying attention to it, but this is a real-life accounting of it, and while it may not be a biopic, probably one of the more fascinating elements about this film, it is the real-life recalling of the director's childhood.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and I really think in that presentation is where I want to pitch why this film is worth your time. There is an interwoven of news footage, of love of movies in this film, and it does a good job at casting the time period, but it clearly shows, the building blocks of what led to the director's life. I think why this film moves into something that is absolutely something you should make time for is that it's portraying this very serious, very violent, almost unbelievably violent civilian conflict from a child's eyes, and dances the line between youthful, funny moments and interweaving that between a family drama fueled by an extremely hateful conflict. And I think that balancing act is brilliant, honestly. Really does a great job with this. This movie is best when we are following our main kid, which is the director, or at least supposed to be a stand-in for the director in some way, and sampling the local life, sampling the characters and the, if you will, the local fare of 1969 Ireland.
Oh man, this is okay. Turning out to be pretty cool.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you're explaining it a little bit too, because so we're not going in blind to it.
Yeah.
Especially with the connection to the director, which Kenneth Branagh, by the way, he was really a big actor. So some of you guys might know him. He plays the main guy in Murder of the Oriental Express.
Yep.
Which the new one's coming out, Death on the Nile, which is along the same lines. He was in Dunkirk, played the captain.
That's right. He was in Dunkirk.
Yeah, or the general or something like that on the dock. So people have an idea who we're talking about. You can picture him a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think it's, again, I can't stress enough, you could take telling this conflict and try to tell a story of what it's like to live during that time and go through that conflict. And I think probably the temptation in any writing of that is, well, let's tell the story of who's getting affected, the families that are affected by this, about this civilian conflict, this religious conflict, and one of, in 1969, not overwhelmingly, long ago. Pairing this, or rather having the lens of a child's eyes be how we consume this, and also keep a brevity to the film. There are youthful and legitimately funny and cute moments of us going around through this child's life and then pairing it with this heartbreaking drama of this conflict. It really is an amazing movie for that reason.
Wow, cool.
Top notch for that reason.
So good kid acting too,
Let's talk about it.
Okay.
It is against all odds good kid acting. I feel, what was recently we talked about?
Why against all odds? Just because
I hate kid actors.
Right, yeah. I forget what film we were talking about that recently, though, for sure. We released an episode where there was good kid
5
acting
a week,
in it.
folks. I mean, I don't know. I gotta get Alzheimer's from this. Yeah, but, I mean, really, if we are going to, if that kid element is going to be sold, it is by the boy. I believe it's Jude Hill.
Jude Hill, yeah.
And does a really solid job here. Almost steals some scenes in how charming he is. I mean, just so adorable, and you could say, oh well, I mean, you can have a cute kid on screen. What does that do? It again, it is the specific pairing of heartbreaking and very real conflict in that country at the time, and between religions. I mean, very deep seated as well historically. It's the specific pairing of light and moments that have a lot of brevity and happiness to how any kid would experience life and experience their loved ones around them, and it's how it's combined is just so great. So I'm very happy to say Jude Hill, though a kid,
young kid, yeah,
exactly. I would say if I had to give how this dance in between, and obviously a kid focus is done. This is like a obviously a historical, but more serious version of like a Jojo Rabbit, where you have a kid focus around, Jojo Rabbit was comedic in nature, but had that dance, similar dance.
Sure, absolutely,
of brevity and drama. So let's talk about some supporting. Judi Dench is probably going to be a very big contender for Best Supporting Actress.
Okay.
She does a phenomenal job. Her and, I'm going to mispronounce, I think it's Ciarán Hinds. I'm so bad with these C names.
Syrian.
Syrian.
I don't think it's Syrian.
I think it's probably Ciarán.
Okay.
I don't have an experience with Ciarán as an actor, but her and Ciarán, Judi Dench and Ciarán Hinds are amazing as the grandparents in this,
cool.
and probably are the best moments of the best moments when we're following the boy around and experiencing some of the local life and kind of tapping into little day in the life type of sequences. They are just so immersed in the that type of life, not wanting to leave Belfast with the conflict. I think they fit a very important role of when we're looking at the conflict on screen, especially being a family drama, so common, I think the critique to this story would be, well, why don't you just leave? Like, why are you staying around in this clearly hostile environment?
Sure.
It's a war zone. They play a role to balance that out and really are just so amazing. Both of them are phenomenal on screen.
Awesome. That's awesome, yeah.
And I was happy to see for Judi Dench because, I mean, I don't know really what she's been in since Skyfall. I can't...
Cats.
Oh. Don't speak the name. This is forbidden.
I think she does a lot of plays as well and everything like
true,
that. Maybe a little quiet during COVID.
Right.
But if we went back, I'm sure she was in a decent amount of stuff. But Cats, that was the big one. But I mean, Judi Dench, 87 and still rocking it, you know?
Yeah, and really does a great job. Some really heartbreaking moments, but really just honestly very enjoyable. Again, they encompass that dynamic encompasses the best part about this sampling day in the life through the boy's eyes. So, a great movie though. I am very happy to say, very opposite the case of The Power of the Dog, because this is a movie that has a lot of hype and I think really does live up to it because of how unique it is. And again, I can't stress enough how much it dances that line. You know, the betrayal of a very serious matter through child's eyes or a child's eyes. You know, it is wonderfully executed. And I think for that reason, we are going to go ahead and give Belfast an 82.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
82.
Give it a shot.
Again, a little under the radar. I mean, it's getting a little bit of buzz, but because it's a bit of indie, you know, I mean, go ahead and while it's in your limited theaters, go for it.
Yeah. And I was happy to see, especially for the director, this is clearly such a passion project of like telling his life through a story.
Yeah, because he wrote it too. Directed and wrote it. Yeah. It's
and
baby.
Believe me, this could very easily go into kind of like a self-congratulatory, like this, you know, my love of movies was born here. No, it's so good. It's so good.
That's awesome. And then like maybe keep an eye on Jude Hill. That the years, as far as he goes from kid to teen to young adult, to see if he keeps on going with it.
Absolutely.
And also should be said, shot in black and white, correct?
Oh yes, yes, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, well, last week we had our the Macbeth film shot in black and white, and this one too, black and white.
Everyone wants black and white. It's good.
Normal aspect ratio though for this, right?
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
not black bars on the side.
And actually, believe it or not, starts in color, but does stylistically turn into black and white at a main moment. Basically.
That's kind of cool. Very opposite of Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. Oh, the true inverse Wizard of Oz.
Huh. But no, I mean, 82. That's huge. I mean, that's a very, very good score. Mm-hmm. Something that I think most people, I guess, should sit down and watch it. You know, it's an hour and 38 minutes, and it just sounds like a solid story.
Very solid story. Very solid. Yep.
All right, very cool, Vin. Hey, I mean, we have some good movies here, very good movies here. Is there anything you'd like to add to this episode, or are we going to roll credits here?
It's a solid week. I'm looking forward to more. I'm looking forward to what's cooking in the books for Fred Astaire February.
Yes,
so
sir.
Stay tuned, and hopefully I can give you some new movies that weren't even relatively on your radar. So.
That's awesome, Vin. We thank you for watching those movies for us and then stopping by. And also, folks, thank you for stopping by as well and giving us a listen. We're going to run through this one more time here. We have Funny Face with a 70%, Judas and the Black Messiah at 80, Copshop with a 79, The Power of the Dog with a 62, and Belfast with an 82%. Again, thank you so much here for stopping by and listening to us, and we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or if you'd just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of film. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our site, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you received from us. You'll get a producer mention on the next podcast episode, too. We're looking to build this into something large and great, but also be independent from those corporate sponsors. So we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.